Hey, and welcome back to my channel. Let's talk a little bit about everyone's favorite, job interviews. In fact, does anyone like job interviews? Interviewing is one of the most daunting parts of the hiring process, especially for the person being interviewed. Before a job interview, you'll likely find yourself with butterflies in your stomach, to say the least. It's totally fair and indeed normal to be nervous going into a job interview. One of mankind's deepest, oldest fears is that of the unknown. What could be more unknown than a job interview? This may be your one chance to make a good impression, but without any idea of what to expect, how could you possibly be ready? Well, the truth is, it is indeed possible to prepare for a job interview and remove some of the uncertainties that comes with it. If you've interviewed for jobs before, you likely already recognize that there is some similarity between the questions you're asked. While everyone's hiring process is a little bit different and some questions will be unique and specific to the job you're interviewing for, interview questions are typically very similar across the board, making it easy to prepare effective answers for them beforehand. Being prepared to answer questions not only helps the interview move along smoothly and reflects well on you as an employee, it also shows the interviewer that you care about getting the job. Given the simplicity of some of these questions, it might seem silly to prepare for them, but consider how many times something has been stuck on the tip of your tongue. It's easy to blank on even with the easiest answers when you're under pressure. How embarrassing is it when someone asks you about your favorite movie or TV show and you suddenly can't think of anything? In a casual conversation, you can simply move on, but stumbling on such simple questions can mean the difference between getting hired or rejected, especially so in a competitive job environment. However, if you can prepare yourself with some research and consider your answers to common interview questions, you're more likely to excel in a job interview. In this video, I've done some research on the most common job interview questions and the best approaches to take when answering them. Obviously, the specific answers will depend on you, so we can't provide anything more than just guidance. Hopefully, you'll find these tips helpful and use them in your next interview. The questions here have been ranked. Number 10 appeared the least in my research, while number 1 was the most common, and you'll see why when we explore it. But before we get started, please consider liking, subscribing, clicking that bell. Really means a lot and helps us out with the algorithm. Alright, so let's get started at number 10. What is your greatest accomplishment? Like many interview questions, there's a lot of directions you can go with this one. Consider though that your personal greatest accomplishment might not be the most relevant to the job at hand. Sure, you and your friends know how impressive it is to make it to number 1 victory royale in Fortnite, but Peggy from HR might not quite grasp the importance or relevancy of that achievement. Instead, think about accomplishments that are specific to the role you're hiring for. In fact, if your Fortnite win demonstrates how you can manage a team effectively, it might be a good example to use. No example is too small or insignificant, but the key here is to tie it back to your work or professional life in some way. The more relevant you can make it, the better. What are your career goals? Companies spend a lot of time and money on the hiring process. Most organizations are only interested in employees who will commit to the role and spend a significant amount of time in it or plan on moving up within the company. Of course, your career goal may be to one day start your own bratwurst company. This wouldn't be the most appropriate answer for, let's say, a job as a bank teller. This can be a tricky question to answer though, because you want to show the employer that you'll provide value, but you don't want to make a long-term commitment you can't keep. To best answer this question, you'll need to do a little bit of research on the company and the specific role they're hiring for. What kind of advancement opportunities are there? What are the organization's long-term goals? And how do they align with yours? When giving your answer, focus on short-term, immediate goals that provide value to the company. What are your salary expectations? This is obviously one of the most important questions to answer and also one of the trickiest. You don't want to turn off the potential employer with a high range, but you also don't want to undervalue yourself. Again, research is going to be crucial here. First, consider and don't be afraid to mention your current or previous salary or even a rough range. Compare and contrast the potential roles with your previous roles. Are they similar? What kind of salaries do other people with the same role or responsibilities make? In an ideal scenario, the employer will mention a salary range to you before having to answer this question. In that case, the answer is fairly simple. This won't always be the case, however, so be prepared with an answer and be ready to negotiate. Why are you the best person for the job? Think of your answer to this question as a sales pitch. Present a confident and concise argument as to why you bring value to the company that others do not. There's no reason to be modest here, but it's also important not to come off as rude or arrogant. To avoid doing so, make sure you're familiar with the specific responsibilities of the job you're applying for and provide specific examples of why you're best suited for that position. Tell a story from your previous roles that summarizes your experience and proves you have the relevant qualifications for the job, while also demonstrating that you can do everything better than the competition. Think in terms of monetary value, as that's what employers are looking for. How can you make or even save money for the organization? Provide examples. How has your experience prepared you for this role? This is very similar to the last question, but not exactly here. You can be a little bit broader with how you define experience. It's still important to consider professional relevance and monetary value here, but you can also dig deeper into your past and consider some defining moments that brought you to where you are today. Another Another common way to phrase this inquiry is describe a difficult problem and how you solved it. Regardless of how it's asked, this is a good way to think about answering this question. Think about a difficult roadblock you hit in your professional or educational life and the specific steps you took to overcome it. The story itself doesn't have to be relevant to the role, but make sure that the skills you're demonstrating are. Consider relating those skills to specific tasks that the potential role requires. Tell me about yourself. Whether or not the interviewer specifically asks you or not, you'll undoubtedly be tasked with describing a little bit about yourself and your background at some point during the interview. You might be tempted to include smaller details and go into your personal history, but don't. Try to leave most personal information out and focus on your general hobbies and interests. Keep it quick and concise though, and do your best to relate everything back to the subject at hand, that is, the role you're applying for. While you won't want to dive into your full life story, do consider detailing your educational and professional history, as well as what keeps you motivated. Keep in mind a main point that ties directly into the role and emphasize it whenever possible. What is your greatest strength? This is one of the most common interview questions. Again, relevance is key here. Unless you can provide a specific example as to why your superior chocolate cake recipe is related to financial consulting, most firms won't be interested in hearing it. Strengths, in this case, don't have to be directly related to the potential job, but they should show that you have the necessary skills to learn and perform the ones you're applying for. Think simple and basic. What are your defining personality traits? And how have you used them to overcome obstacles in your professional life? Don't just give a list of personality traits. Provide specific examples by sharing anecdotes from your previous workplaces. What is your greatest weaknesses? Nobody likes talking about their weaknesses. Some have a hard time even acknowledging them at all. While this question is designed to test your self-awareness and ability to receive and adapt to criticism, there's no need to go too hard on yourself here. Acknowledge your weaknesses by talking about how you're attempting to improve or resolve them. This takes the focus away from the weaknesses themselves and emphasize your adaptability and problem-solving skills. One common answer you should avoid at all costs is perfectionism. This is a bit of a faux pas answer that doesn't really give the interviewer anything valuable. Does this mean that you give up when something isn't perfect? You don't stop working until something is perfect? Neither of these are necessarily positive qualities. Focus on your self-awareness and adaptability by sharing stories of self-improvement. Why do you want this job? Sure, everyone has a dream job, but does anyone truly want a job? I mean, preferably we get paid for doing nothing, right? This isn't a good answer. Don't use this one. Just thinking out loud. With that said though, they say if you like a job, you won't truly work a day in your life. Sure, you may not want this job like you want to win the lottery, but there are definitely things about it that attracted you to it. Focus on how the job is relevant to you by comparing it to your hobbies and interests. Demonstrate to the employer that this isn't just a job for you, it's more of an extension of what you already do. Additionally, do some research about the company or organization and emphasize the values and traits that align with yours. Showing your employer that you're invested in the company and not just looking for a paycheck goes a long way. Why are you leaving, or did you just leave your job? Out of all the interview questions I researched, this one undoubtedly came up the most. It's one of the most challenging interview questions to answer, and also one of the most important for the employer. Your answer reveals a lot about you and can certainly make or break your changes regardless of your qualifications. If you left or are leaving your current job on amicable terms, it's okay to say that. Additionally, if you were laid off as a result of budget cuts or reorganization, you could mention that as well. However, it's never a good idea to complain about your previous role or even badmouth a former employer, no matter how much it might be true. It will just honestly reflect poorly on you. Stay positive here and focus on your future goals and motivations. Also, compare and contrast your current role to the potential job. What benefits are there to switching? Avoid negative or challenging details and don't share too much information. The running theme throughout all of this is to tailor your answer to fit the situation. Do research on the company's goals and roles, responsibilities, and be sure to tie your answers into them as best as you can. Of course, these 10 questions represent only a fraction of potential interview questions. If you have any to add, be sure to share them with me in the comments below. Other than that, please consider liking, subscribing, clicking that bell. Really means a lot, helps us with the algorithm. I also try my best to post daily at Preston_Park, so feel free to follow me. That's it for today. Thank you again, and we'll see you on the next one.